After watching an entire season's worth of games from last year's rookie quarterbacks, there was a lot to take away. Some went on to make the playoffs, some were just in a horrible situation, so we don't quite know what to take away yet. Others had some shockingly bad rookie mistakes that made you shake your head, but they can follow it up by a jaw-dropping throw or run that made every fan on their team excited about the future of the franchise. And some didn't see much playing time at all, but that's exactly how it should go. Rookie seasons leave a lot of room for improvement and mistakes to be made. But the patience from fans, teammates, and front office staffs will eventually run out, and they expect you to take that next leap in year two. And year two has always been a pivotal year for young quarterbacks to make the next step, and you really begin to see if you're the guy or not. So let's cover the 5 first-round quarterbacks taken in last year's draft, as they have now had a whole offseason to work with their team that they can 100% call their own, and they're starting to get the hang of the pace of the NFL on and off the field. We can break down what kind of improvements we can expect from these guys in year two, and we can do this by looking at how they progressed in their rookie seasons, what moves their team made in the offseason to help them out, and covering all of their situations. And of course, at the end, we will rank who we think will have the most improvement in their sophomore year campaigns. There's obviously a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. And to keep things organized and to not tip our hand to the order of who we think will improve the most, let's go in order of when they were drafted. Starting with the first overall pick of last year's draft, Trevor Lawrence. And as I alluded to in the intro, it is really hard to know exactly what we can take away from his rookie year. How much of his play was hindered by a horrible coach who made a bad culture, locker room, terrible play calling and concepts, or how many of these things were directly Lawrence's fault? And I think a lot of these questions will be answered this upcoming season, because individually last year we saw flashes of generational talent that he was promised to be, but we also saw some strings of bad games where people can point to where he looked like a complete bust. I don't think it's fair and definitely too soon to say either way, even though most people are already grounded in an opinion. But let's take a look at why this year we will take away much more and also see what the Jags did this offseason. The first thing we need to mention is they now have head coach Doug Peterson. And this is exactly what Lawrence needed. Someone who will come into the team and will immediately get their respect with his championship pedigree, and also having an offensive-minded guy who is going to aid Lawrence in his development. He's bringing in or something similar to what the Eagles ran and had so much success with to win them a Super Bowl, and I think Lawrence will thrive in this RPO-style offense. I think Peterson will simplify things and allow Lawrence just to be the talent he is and not get too mentally bogged down and overwhelmed with complicated concepts, at least early on. And as the game starts to slow down for him, Peterson will be able to add more and more, and then Lawrence will be the one expanding Doug Peterson's playbook and unlock new possibilities and schemes that he wasn't even able to run in Philly. They got some new weapons around him to help him out as well. You know the feeling when you find a gift card that you totally forgot you had, and the joy of finding it is equal to the first time you got it? Well, that's exactly how Lawrence has to feel about finally getting to play with Travis Etienne. It's like the Jags just have an extra first round pick this year that they get to use. He will be huge in the run game, and I believe the passing game as well. He's a special talent, and I expect Peterson to use him in special ways, and obviously Trevor already has a connection with him back in his days at Clemson. On top of this, whether you want to argue if they overpaid or not, they did, but they also have Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Evan Ingram as new weapons for him to throw to as well. They also re-signed Cam Robinson at left tackle, signed Brandon Scherf at guard, and they drafted a center with the first pick of the 3rd round in Luke Fortner. So Lawrence might be one of the most confusing on this list, as we don't truly know too much from his rookie year, but it's safe to say that the Jags have thrown a lot in his direction, trying to help him out to be more successful than he was last year. Maybe not the most eye-popping pickups, but it's at least their way of expressing that they want him to succeed, and they are all in on him being their guy, which as a young quarterback is really all you can ask for. But moving on to the number 2 overall pick of the draft, a guy who now has so many new weapons around him, and with his number 2 overall pick rookie deal, he now has enough money to buy all the flowers in every store in New York for Mother's Day. We're talking Zach Wilson. I did do a full film breakdown on his rookie year, as I did for all of these guys, but it's hard to find a guy whose numbers lied more than he did. He did have his moments where he was simply outclassed, like he was with a Bill Belichick defense where he went on to throw 4 interceptions in a week 2 embarrassment, but Overall, his bad numbers from last year don't show the full story. Like how skewed the bad numbers were towards the beginning of the season, it doesn't fully reflect his improvement in some of the plays he was making in the back half of the season, or how many times I was watching film and time again his receivers caught the passes and got tackled at the 1-yard line. All of this was with a depleted wide receiver room and also some offensive linemen that had succumbed to injury. He made a great deal of impressive throws that makes you think that all the talent is there, and his progression in the league will no doubt depend on his mental process sharpening up, making good decisions more consistently and faster. And as the game starts to slow down and he gets more and more pieces around him, it looks like sky can be the limit for him. And Zach Wilson, maybe more so than anyone on this list, has a lot of new added help. And the Jets have sneakily constructed a very solid offensive roster this offseason. Not only do they have a deep receiving room with Elijah Moore and Corey Davis, but they also have Garrett Wilson, Braxton Berrios, and Denzel Mims. They also brought in CJ Uzama from the Bengals and drafted Jeremy Ruckert, which was an underrated draft pick in my opinion, as the tight end out of Ohio State has a lot of talent. But now they also have a really solid 1-2 punch with Breece Hall and Michael Carter in the run game. Size and speed everywhere you look on the field when it comes to Zach Wilson and the weapons around him. But all of this really doesn't matter if they can't protect Zach Wilson, and their line should be much better this year, now fully healthy first and foremost, but they also have some new additions like Laken Tomlinson, and now suddenly out of nowhere, this Jets team actually looks like they can scare some defenses if they find the ways to put it all together. Zach Wilson has a very bright future, and this second year should really be a huge leap year for him in terms of productivity. But if not, he doesn't have that many more excuses to fall back on anymore. But more on the ranking later. Moving on to another confusing one, number 3 on the list, but also 3rd pick overall from last year. Nobody is in between on him. He's either the next Josh Allen and the Niners are Super Bowl bound, or this was one of the worst trades in the draft, if not draft history, and people think that they might as well ride out the season with Jimmy G, even him coming off the injury. And that guy is obviously Trey Lance. And unlike other people, I'm somewhere in the middle, but definitely more optimistic. Talking about this 49ers offense, it's definitely a system. All of the creativity in the run game, which opens up some very cool designs in the passing game, paired with a great defense, has been the reason why the 49ers have had so much success the past few seasons. And whether we just forget or it just gets lost in recent history, the 49ers were a dropped interception away from being in the Super Bowl just last season. This is an entirely different conversation if this ball gets picked off. I mention this because the Niners is a team that is all the way there and ready to compete now. And in the Shanahan offense, I think Trey Lance is a better fit than Jimmy G. What Kyle can scheme up with a quarterback who can run the ball like a running back and bomb the ball 70 yards down the field is very exciting. And it came out at the end of last year that Trey Lance had a finger injury on his throwing hand that he said affected every single aspect of throwing the ball. I thought he still threw it pretty decently even with that. But he has now had a full offseason with no Jimmy G in the building, and he is taking full leadership over first-team responsibilities, and I think we will finally see a full season of Lance coming up. And I really wanted to see him play last year, probably selfishly, but this approach of letting a guy sit has shown a lot of success, and out of all 5 on this list, he is on the best team. Look for Shanahan's offense this year to look similar, but much less limited. They still have an elite offensive line. They drafted Tyrion Davis-Price and Danny Gray in the draft, 2 classic 49ers offensive weapon selections. So even though we have the least film to look back on Trey Lance, it's hard to not get obsessed with the possibilities that his raw talent allows his offense to be capable of. And being fully healthy and learning for a year on a loaded roster, I wouldn't be so quick to rule out the Niners like a lot of people are doing already. But moving on, let's talk about the guy who I had as the most talented quarterback pre-draft last year, Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields. Now, Fields' rookie year runs in parallel more so with Lawrence and Wilson's. Not on a great team, some bad rookie mistakes, but also some holy shit, that was incredible plays. But unlike Lawrence and Wilson's, whose teams recognized that talent and thought they should spend any amount of money and any draft picks necessary to help out their young star quarterback, the Bears sat back, let their best wide receiver walk. They lost their two best defensive players, and they waited in the draft to the third round to take a 25-year-old speedster with a limited route tree in Velus Jones Jr. I don't have anything against Velus Jones, but it is not the solution to all the Bears' problems. The Bears drafted two defensive players with their first two picks instead of any lineman or any wide receiver to help out Fields, with their line and receiving core still being among the league's worst. And I know they had a lot of holes to fill, but man, it just doesn't feel right knowingly taking two defensive backs when that could have been a new guard or a top tier tight end to help out Fields. They didn't really make any splash signings in free agency and almost did nothing to help Fields out. And it really makes me think and question why they even got a quarterback in the first place if they're doing a full scale rebuild like this. It might be because it's not the vision for the new GM and head coach, but shit, this is just sad because Bears fans are some of the best in the league. They have always been so passionate and shown a lot of love to this channel and bringing up great opinions and talking points when we talk about the Bears. But Justin Fields just deserves better than this. And now their roster top to bottom right now is looking like one of the worst in the leagues right now. I think Fields has the chance to be the most talented out of any of these guys. He has superstar written all over him. And it's just so frustrating last year to see him not only being held back, and of course he wasn't perfect, but there was no players on the team, and there wasn't any sign of good coaching to hide or make up for any of the mistakes. And this year, I think Fields is individually going to get better, but I think this team is in a worse place than it was last year, and genuinely sad to see this much talent be a part of a rebuild like this. I mean, Bears fans are so amazing. They're even getting excited about getting a guy like N'Keal Harry. But before we wrap things up and rank all five of these guys, let's get to the last guy we need to talk about, McCorkle Jones. The most successful quarterback individually and team-wise out of any of the starters, as he made the playoffs, was a Pro Bowl replacement. Mac was simply drafted into a much better situation than the other guys, team-wise and coaching. But that is not to say that he didn't take full advantage of it. After he won the starting role, he looked far beyond his years from being a rookie. His accuracy and decision making, his ability to lead the team to string multiple games together, even after a rocky start, all the way to being the #1 seed in the AFC at one point. Whether the game plan was handing the ball off and only throwing it 3 times all game long, or if Mac had to let it fly over 35 to 50 times and throw for 300 plus yards for them to win, he was able to do it. And this video being about who will make the largest jump from year 1 to year 2, he's in a really weird spot because his rookie year was on such a high level already. So he might be lower on the ranking in terms of improvement because the floor is already him being a Pro Bowler. But the Patriots are always going to be solid, and them adding Devontae Parker and drafting Tyquan Thornton, I think these were both great additions to match their already solid offensive line and a running game with 2 great tight ends along with Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar already in the receiving room. Mac Jones is going to keep being the leader of this team, and I doubt we will see any regression from his first year, and he's only going to get smarter, continue doing the Patriot way, and for Patriots fans, hopefully become the second coming of Brady. So now let's get to ranking who we think will make the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2. And the first on this list is going to be Zach Mother-Lovin' Wilson. If you want to go back and watch a game from last year, watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game late in the season. Nothing statistically will jump out at you, but at this point in the season, the O-line and receivers were all banged up, and he was still making plays all over the field, making huge first down conversions and lasers over the middle and tight windows. He was a 4th and 2 conversion away from beating the GOAT head-to-head with a severely outmanned team. A lot of teams had a great offseason, but you can't talk about great offseasons and drafts without talking about the Jets. It's definitely going to be an uphill battle for years to come in a loaded AFC East, but the Jets aren't looking to be the punching bags anymore. All the players we talked about earlier were not only great value and scheme fit, but all of the guys were there to help out Zach Wilson have a more successful year too. I think he will have the biggest jump out of any of the guys we talked about in terms of individual, but probably also team success. And second on the list, I'm going to put Trey Lance here. It's hard to rank him because really where was he at to begin with? But when I start to think that he's going to make a team better that honestly should have been in the Super Bowl last year, I think he could put up some pretty insane numbers and might be a great dark horse MVP pick for any sports bettor out there looking for great long odds. I have a ton of trust in Kyle Shanahan. I don't think their run game is going anywhere. If anything, it's just going to be scarier with Lance under center. And a very similar to Goff and Stafford, Shanahan can really have fun and let the whole field be a sandbox with Lance's ability to let it fly. And everything in between, he has great weapons to throw to, and he will also have the luxury of play action, opening things up and making some easy throws over the middle of the field. But finally, third on this list, and let me tell you, this was close, Trevor Lawrence is going to have a much better second year. I don't think it can be stated enough how much I love the Doug Peterson with Lawrence the more I sit with it. Everything wrong with Lawrence last year are things I have no question Peterson can come in and fix. Look for big numbers with limited mistakes next year from Sunshine in the Sunshine State. And fourth on our list is going to be Mac McCorkle-Jones. While this isn't a pure ranking video on who's the best, because Mac would not be the fourth on this list, he is here because others ahead of him have a lot more room to grow in a significantly better situation than they had last year. Mac is probably going to look like a year 10 starter with the whole offseason to grind the playbook and work out with his guys. Even though this team didn't change like crazy, they did get marginally better and in ways that will only help Mac out. So this is why he finds himself here at this spot. And lastly, that means we have Justin Fields at 5. Even though I think he's going to be better, he's going to have to be much better for make up the team that he's on. They were a lowly 6-11 last year, which is bad for Bears standards, but unfortunately, I don't even see that number being reached with their schedule and what their roster looks like as of right now. But it won't be Fields' fault, don't get me wrong. But in terms of who will improve the most, I think Fields has the biggest upfield battle to have a breakout sophomore year campaign. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to like this video if you like videos like these. Make sure to comment down below what you think, what you would think you would change about this ranking, or if you think I'm missing out on a key element of all of this. And as always, make sure to subscribe if you enjoy daily sports content. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel, but that's all I have for you today. But as always, I will see you all tomorrow. Peace!